Making a 3D Sonic game proved difficult for Sonic Team, as making Sonic 3D was going to be more difficult than games like Mario, since Mario is a much lower character than Sonic. They tried with Sonic Extreme, but that game got canned, and I think everyone knows about the story with Sonic Extreme's background history. So the Sonic games that came up between Sonic 3 and Knuckles and 1998 were really the only Sonic games you had to look forward to. And if you saw my last video on Sonic, I think most of these games are okay to straight up some of the worst Sonic games I played. But that's not all that important in this video. After the failure that was the Sega Saturn, Sega made their next console, the Sega Dreamcast, which was released in late November of 1998. It was capable of online play, 480p video footage with the VGA cables, and a higher graphical fidelity than the competition for the next 2 years. It felt like Sega put in their all learning and researching the Dreamcast. But we all know that this was the last Sega console they made. But what's more important is that their big game to show off the Sega Dreamcast is a game we are all too familiar with. A Sonic game that would bring the character back into the forefront of gaming. They went through many things with this game. It was going to be an RPG at one point, and the Dreamcast was going to have less RAM than what it was originally going to have. But then, in 1998, in Japan, and 1999 in the rest of the world, we were gifted Sonic's first foray into the third dimension. Talking about 3D Sonic in the YouTube landscape is really a dead horse that we all beat to death, since almost everyone has something to say on this hedgehog. For both the good and the bad. Sonic Adventure I think is one of the most talked about video games on YouTube, alongside Mario 64 and Zelda Ocarina of Time. So that means that this is going to be the vanilla ice cream of YouTube content on my channel, since everyone loves Sonic Adventure videos. I have a lot of nostalgia for Sonic Adventure personally. Sonic Adventure was one of my first Sonic games as a kid, alongside Sonic Heroes and Sonic and a Secret Piece of Shit Rings. I specifically played the GameCube version, Sonic Adventure DX, as a kid, and I was able to do most things in the game, but to be frank, I was really bad at the game. Couldn't find a way to Amy after Speed Highway as Sonic, beat Tails, couldn't do the first Knuckles stage, couldn't do Hot Shelter as Amy. No kid could do any stage with Big, and if you said you did, you're probably lying. And Gamma was the one that I was not vying with and just never touched after Final Leg. It wasn't until I was much older that I beat Sonic Adventure and thought it was a good game, but that was really about it. For a game that has been lauded as one of the best Sonic games for years on end, I just felt that time and the decisions made with this game weren't really all they were cracked up to be. But now I have played the game twice ever since beating it and have played it again to get a better grasp on it. I think that it is time to get Sonic content back into high gear with the Sonic games people really care about. This is another video on Sonic Adventure. Now, I usually do a setup after the intro, but that's going to be impossible to do with games like Sonic Adventure, Adventure 2, Heroes, and Sonic 06. The reason for that is that these games focus on multiple campaigns instead of one focused campaign. So for these games, I will focus on each campaign as their story, gameplay, and talk about one thing that is focused on the overall game before moving on to the next campaign. Sonic Adventure has the most campaigns in the series with 6 campaigns for us to follow. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Big, and E102 Gamma. What makes going through each campaign feel different story-wise, despite the fact that there are segments that are intertwined, is that characters will have different dialogue depending on the campaign you are on. The best example that I could come up with was Amy catches up to Sonic in both of their campaigns.
Long time no see!
Amy!
What's wrong with you anyway? Listen, this birdie seems to be in trouble, so you need to be his bodyguard for a while.
You must be kidding!
If you don't, we're just gonna tag along anyway. Long time no see!
Amy!
What's your problem? See, this little birdie's got in trouble. I think you should be his bodyguard a little while.
What?
Doesn't matter. We'll just tag along.
No way!
Come on, don't run away! Oh!
Now with all that out of the way, we could talk about the game with Sonic's campaign.
Let's get him!
Sonic's story out of the 6 is probably the most straightforward one of them all, if you know what you're getting into with the Sonic series. The story starts with Sonic fighting the main antagonist of the game, Chaos. After a boss fight against Eggman, we learn that Chaos is being controlled by Dr. Eggman. We have a clear motive for why we need to stop Eggman, since Chaos gets more powerful with every Chaos Emerald it absorbs, which is foretold in the ancient tablets that Eggman, and the fact that Eggman uses Chaos to advantage to build Robotnik Land. Plus the fact that Eggman stole a Chaos Emerald from a child, and pretty much from there, it's a typical Sonic adventure. Wait, that's the name of the game. The only moment I could think of that is connected to the overall story aside from Eggman and the Chaos boss fights is that Sonic gets a vision of the past, which I will talk about more when I get to Knuckles' story. Sonic's character in the series is a pretty simple one, but it works for what he is supposed to represent. Sonic is a free spirit and believes in what is right, so him fighting Eggman, a person who believes in order and harming nature, it makes sense why Sonic would do whatever it takes to take him down, which is shown many times throughout this game. I also like that while Sonic represents the 90s cool culture, he isn't a douche in these games. He's actually a pretty chill guy all around and cares for people. Like after Sky Chase Act 1, his natural instinct is to worry and find out where Tails is.
Tails? Tails! You're not who I'm looking for. Oh, I wonder if he's okay.
But other than that, not much to say about Sonic's story and his campaign. Now we get into Sonic's gameplay. Sonic's campaign is the longest campaign in the game, with him going through every single stage in the game. Emerald Coast, Windy Valley, Casinopolis, Ice Cap, Twinkle Park, Speed Highway, Red Mountain, Skydeck, Lost World, and Final Egg. Sonic as a character is one that is hard to transition to the third dimension, like I said at the beginning of the video. Mario, Link, and Kirby would be a lot easier to transition to the third dimension, since they are not fast like Sonic. They move at a slower pace and have more simple physics. But I think that Sonic Team did a really good job of transitioning Sonic to the third dimension with this title. From this game all the way to Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, the core gameplay controls would be carried over to each game within that time frame, which has been dubbed the Adventure Formula. Sonic Adventure's controls are definitely my favorite controlling Sonic out of the Adventure Formula games. The handling of the characters is basically perfect, with the more floaty jumps having you use momentum, which is arguably easier than in the classic games, but I ain't gonna complain about that. Sonic in this game has the same moves that he had in the classic games. He could jump and he could spin dash. The spin dash was reworked to fit better into 3D space, since in the 2D games you had to hold down and then mash the hell out of the button to charge the spin dash. In the Adventure Formula games, you just hold down the action button to charge it up, then let go of the button to go forward. The spin dash in this game is broken, as with it you can break the levels in half or find secrets in areas you never expected to find secrets in, which I get to when I talk about the levels in the campaign. You can also spam the action button to go fast, which is also so satisfying to do. I am glad Chaos X added it to Project 06. There is one new move that Sonic gets in the game that will be a staple for all Sonic games moving forward, the homing attack. The homing attack is a staple in 3D Sonic, and it's a simple mechanic. When you are near an enemy while jumping, you can hit the jump button again to attack the enemy. I think this was a smart move on the designer's part to add this mechanic. If there was no homing attack in the game, you would have to rely on your depth perception to see if the jump could hit the enemy, so adding the homing attack removes that problem. You can also homing attack when there are no enemies, which should give you some form of momentum. You can also homing attack item boxes, and that's really about it with homing attack. Simple, but well done. One thing this game introduces that will also be in Sonic Adventure 2 and in Sonic 06 is that you get upgrades to your moves. For Sonic, you get the upgrades that affect the new move he unlocks in this game, which is the Lightspeed Dash. The Lightspeed Dash in this game works differently compared to the rest of the games that introduce this mechanic. You hold down the action button until you glow blue. Then, when you let go of the button near a row of rings, you will dash through the rings, leading you to find shortcuts. It's rare to go back to this version of the power-up, since like I said, later games will refine it, though the upgrades make it faster and more interesting. You get the Crystal Ring after getting the Lightspeed Dash, and it makes the charge-up state of the Lightspeed Dash go by much faster, and then you get the Ancient Light, which allows you to attack robots with the Lightspeed Dash, turning it into the Lightspeed Attack. I think the Crystal Ring is a necessary power-up to have, and the Lightspeed Attack is a power-up I rarely use, since I'd rather just homing attack enemies. But it did come in useful with the Chaos 6 boss fight. Like I said earlier, Sonic goes through every level in this game. I think that for the good majority of levels he goes through, they are all good to great. Emerald Coast is a good starting level. While not having the most pass, it has many skips that you can do to save time and improve your runs. Ice Cap has a pretty weak first half with pace-breaking platforming, but the skips in this level are the most satisfying, and the ending part is memorable for all of the right reasons, and really showing that 90s cool that Sonic is known for. Twinkle Park is an overall good stage with one of the most visually interesting locations and the cool skips that you could do in the stage. Lost Road is a contender for my favorite level in the game with all the skips that you can do and the overall design of the level. I also like that while it is recommended, you can just skip the light mirrors in the dark room and be a-okay. Final Egg is a level worthy of being the final level for Sonic, with you going from the majestic likes of Lost Road to the mechanical Final Egg, as well as the fact that it is the longest level in Sonic's campaign, excluding that stage I will talk about later. But I think that the standout levels in Sonic's campaign are definitely Speed Highway and Red Mountain. Both of these levels are the most open levels in not only this game, but I would say in any Sonic game. Speed Highway I think speaks for itself. It is one of the most well recognized Sonic levels in the franchise. There are many ways to traverse through this level. You can try and go to the top path of this building, you can use perfectly timed jumps to go from the beginning of the Dawn section to reach the end, or be a speedrunner and use the building at the beginning of the level to be at the end of the section. There is also the spectacle that is the mid section of the level. Sonic running down a building while going at his fastest speed. As a kid, this moment was mind blowing to me, and I can only imagine what kids playing this game when the Dreamcast was new thought about it. Red Mountain is as open as Speed Highway. There are many moments for you to skip moments of the stage, like using the Lightspeed Dash to follow a ring trail to another path. There are also many secrets in this stage, like using the Spin Dash to go up this mountain to get rings and lives, as well as using this ring trail to get some lives near the end of the section. I do think that Red Mountain is a little weaker than Speed Highway, just because I am not the biggest fan of the second half of the level in Red Mountain. Not bad, just more linear and not as open as the first half of the level. Now there are levels in this game that I am not a big fan of. Windy Valley is an okay level that is bogged down with how linear the level is halfway through. The first half is a good way to introduce multiple pathways, but the halfway point is all very linear. Casinopolis is a level I never liked in Sonic's campaign. The main goal is to get 400 rings to reach the Chaos Emerald, but it's such a pace breaker of a level, because you have to enter one of the 2 pinball machines in the casino to get the rings, and I said this before with Sonic Spinball and I will say it again. I do not find pinball to be a fun game in a home environment. You can go into the sewers, but I honestly don't know how you get to the sewers in that level, so I had to do pinball all over again. Finally, there is Skydeck. There are some good moments in Skydeck, but the first part and third part are kind of a slog to get through. The first part suffers from the same problem as the second half of Windy Valley, and the third part is fine till the egg carrier flips on its side and you have to climb it. Sonic also goes through 2 extra acts in the game, Sky Chase 1 and Sky Chase 2. Now, this is easily the worst part of the campaign. I have made it no secret that I think auto-scrollers are not fun to go through, since you basically lose the pace of the game to the game itself. So playing Sky Chase 4 times in this game just leaves me feeling bored out of my fucking mind as I shoot and dodge the egg carrier. Sonic fights the most bosses in this game with Chaos Zero, Egg Hornet, Chaos 4, Chaos 6, and the Egg Viper. Chaos Zero is a pretty standard boss to start the game with, same with Egg Hornet. Chaos 4 is definitely my pick for the worst boss in this game, because it's just a waiting game with little to no stress to fight against him. It also doesn't help that the game wants you to fight Chaos 4 3 times with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Chaos 6 is a pretty good boss, but I have fought him many times and learned the strats that I can't help but beat him in a short time. Finally, Egg Viper is a boss that I like in concept, but the overall execution is one that goes on for longer than I like. There's also a chance for the boss's hitboxes to be wonky and you will miss the chance to homie attack. Now, Sonic's campaign overall, I quite like it. It's probably my favorite, but there's a few others that go through that I also think are pretty good. But yeah, pretty cut and clear, and I'm down to replay Sonic's campaign any day of the week despite the problems. Now let's get into one of the additions to Sonic Adventure, which are the Hub Worlds. Sonic Adventure is the first Sonic game to introduce Hub Worlds into the franchise, which is something that is only in a few Sonic games with the likes of Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed, and Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Now I like the idea of a Hub World in a Sonic game, an area for the character to run around in, test out abilities, and make the world of the game more well realized as a good idea, especially in a Sonic game. But I think in terms of the execution, Sonic Adventure's Hub Worlds just break up the pacing for me to the point where I don't really like them. Now I do think that the Hub Worlds in this game have a lot of charm to them in ways that I would say Sonic 06 or Rise of Lyric really don't have. The hubs change during certain parts of the character's journey or whenever a certain segment of the story happens, like when you unlock more of the Hub World with Sonic and Tails after completing Casinopolis. It's a pretty clever way of making the railroad parts of the Hub World feel more organic than most other Hub Worlds at the time. But what kills them for me is that they are too big for my liking. Going from an area to area in Sonic Adventure takes longer than what I'm willing to go through pacing wise and through my attention span. With characters like Sonic and Tails, I do not mind this whatsoever, but it's with Amy and Big that just becomes a commute between the levels and where the next cutscene is going to be. There's also a problem in Sonic 06 and Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. The only time I thought Hub Worlds were done well were in Sonic Unleashed, where they were small and not confusing. I understand the ambition with these Hub Worlds, but it's one of the reasons I don't replay Sonic Adventure nowadays. With all that out of the way, let's get into Tails' campaign.
Here I come, Sonic!
Tails' story on the surface looks like it will be the same as Sonic, but with some minor differences. And I would say for about half of the campaign, you wouldn't be wrong for saying that, as from the Egg Hornet all the way to Sky Chase Act 1, Tails goes through the same story beats and levels as Sonic. But everything changes after Sky Chase Act 1. Tails has a flashback to when he first met Sonic, which makes you realize that from Sonic 2 all the way to this point in Tails' campaign, he really was only a sidekick to Sonic and never really done anything for himself. So now that he is all by himself at this point in this campaign, he's going to finish his prototype to get to the egg carrier. This leads to about 15 to 30 minutes of playing as Tails. He finds a Chaos Emerald, gets a vision of the past similar to Sonic, and then he finishes his prototype, which leads him to finding the egg carrier and Sonic. After the egg carrier gets blown up, Tails finds that Eggman launched a missile, but failed, so he will manually detonate it himself. This is where Tails realizes that he has done so much for the past 24 hours away from Sonic, and that he could do anything that he puts his mind to, which leads him to get to the missile before Eggman and defeat the Egg Walker. I think this is a pretty nice arc Tails got, and from this point on for a good while, Tails has never needed Sonic's help and has proven himself useful and dependent. But what about Tails' gameplay? Tails' campaign goes through 5 levels: Windy Valley, Casinopolis, Ice Cap, Skydeck, and Speed Highway. The goal for his levels are different from the other characters, where he needs to get to the goal before Sonic does. Tails' moveset is basically pulled from the classic games with a few new toys to play with. Tails' main gimmick is that he can fly. Flying in a 3D platformer is something that is rarely done, and the reason for that is the fact that flying is overpowered and Tails' flying is broken in this game. Tails, when he is flying, is arguably faster than Sonic, and it doesn't help that it could skip parts of the stage that Sonic can't. Windy Valley, for example, is a level that can be beaten in less than a minute because of Tails' flying.
Come on, Tails!
Wasn't too bad.
It doesn't help that one of Tails' power-ups makes him fly faster in the air, and you could get it at the beginning of his campaign before you even fight the Egg Hornet. Some other things that Tails could do is that he could spin into a ball like in the 2D games, but you need to be moving to activate it. And he has the iconic Tail Swipe, which you activate by pressing the action button. Tails also has a power-up that upgrades his Tail Swipe. The ribbon he gets in the flashback allows him to Tail Swipe indefinitely, which is useful for the boss fight against the Egg Walker. In terms of levels Tails goes through, I don't really have much to say on his levels, because most of them are all the same too. When talking about how Tails goes through them, he goes through the third part of Windy Valley, which I mentioned is the easiest level to break, so you can fly to the end of the level. He goes through the sewers of Casinopolis, which is a part of Sonic's level, and has the potential of being difficult with tight hallways and not much wiggle room, but you can fly through them and win. Ice Cap is worse with Tails than Sonic, because it's all about the snowboarding, which I don't mind on its own, but Sonic had half the level to traverse and skip through, and how the snowboarding was set up in that campaign, which made me want to go through it, whereas with Tails, it's just he and Sonic now racing for the Chaos Emerald. Skydeck is similar to Windy Valley, where it's easily broken in Tails' favor. As Sonic, this stage is very linear with not that many pathways because of the fact that you are on platforms most of the time. As Tails, you can just fly over the platform parts and generally leave Sonic far behind them. Finally, Speed Highway is the best level in this campaign by default because of the fact that you explore new parts of the level, and that is really about it, because this level still has the same problems as the other levels in his campaign. Tails also has 3 sub-levels in his own campaign. He shares Sky Chase Act 1 and Act 2 with Sonic, which I already said on my piece on, but the other sub-level is Sand Hill, where it's a short level where you snowboard down to the bottom and try to get the high score. And that's really about it. Tails goes through 3 bosses in this game: the Egg Hornet, Chaos 4, and the Egg Walker. I already explained the Egg Hornet and Chaos 4, but there really isn't much to talk about with the Egg Walker, since he does the same thing over and over again by heading from one end of the arena to the other. Another thing that I need to mention is the pacing of Tails' campaign. The middle is a drag to get through, because it is all mostly cutscene, which I don't mind much since the story is important for Tails, but the fact that it is split up with only the sub-levels, which aren't even that fun to go through since they are auto-scrollers and a snowboarding level without the spectacle of it being set up. For all of these reasons, Tails is on the lower end of the campaign ranking for me, but not the absolute worst when it comes to who we have in this game. And let's talk about the presentation of the game. Now, when talking about presentation, I normally talk about the way the game looks and the music, but for this section, I will talk about the cutscenes, the spectacle, and the art style change that happened with this game. So let's get into it. The cutscenes in this game get a lot of flack nowadays for their line deliveries and how memeable they are, which, I mean, it's not unwarranted.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
Now, I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt, given the standards of video game cutscenes weren't really that high back in the late 90s, but I can't deny the fact that the cutscenes in this game are using pre-made animations throughout the entire game, with them changing speeds and it being really stilted, when games like Crash Bandicoot 2 and Spyro 2 all had in-engine cutscenes that were all animated. But I think that was more so because of the extra money they got from Sony. There is also the fact that the pacing of the cutscenes is really bad. Throughout the game, there will be awkward spaces between lines and it's very jarring, as well as the fact that sometimes there will be moments of no lines and it makes scenes feel robotic.
I wonder what he meant by that. Something bugging you? No time for games, Sonic! Give me the emeralds you have, right now!
There is also the fact that music will replay after cutscenes from a few seconds ago would play the same song, as well as having song choices that aren't the best that are a big tonal issue. And this is just a me thing, but seeing the same scenarios multiple times just kills certain scenes for me. Like the scene of Sonic fighting Gamma on the main deck of the Ed carrier, since you have to watch that scene 4 times with not much new to add in each campaign. I do think the story in Sonic Adventure 1 is good for the most part and has a lot of interesting things attached to it, but the cutscene presentation doesn't help much with selling the story to me. There are moments in the game, however, that do take advantage of the Dreamcast's power and show off some spectacle and interesting tricks to the game. I think everyone knows about the part in Sonic Speed Highway where he runs down the building, but I also love the spectacle of Sonic snowboarding down a mountain away from the avalanche, the screens in Amy's hot shelter showing Zero before he breaks in, the mirrors in Twinkle Park, and many others. It's a game that just oozes next-gen appeal. Now, one thing this game brought to the table that I absolutely adore is the artwork they went for with this game. The artist of Sonic 3D Blast and character designer for Sonic R, Yuji Okawa, was tasked with redesigning the whole cast after showing off his redesigns for Sonic, and I think he hit right out of the park with the redesigns. I think it's no secret that Uekawa's art style is iconic and activates the imagination. Even though they don't use him much for the official games, he still shows up in promotion material and even the cover of the 2019 annual issue for the IDW comics. Easily my favorite art style for Sonic. Now let's move on to Knuckles' campaign.
Okay, let's go!
Knuckles' story is definitely the most lore-focused in the entire game, given who he is connected to. It begins with him monologuing about how he is destined to be on Angel Island to guard the Master Emerald, and how he wonders how he was given this job. During this night, chaos comes out of the Master Emerald as well as the light that was in Sonic and Tails' campaign. Since the Master Emerald kept Angel Island in the sky, it fell into the ocean, so Knuckles spends the entire campaign looking for the Master Emerald pieces. Well, that is the basic synopsis of Knuckles' campaign. The real meat and potatoes of this campaign is the connection to the past that this game focuses on overall. During certain parts of each character's campaign, they will go back into the past and see the events that led to what was shown at the end of Sonic's campaign in the final vision in the final story. You see a story about the Echidna tribe and how the statement absolute power corrupts absolutely comes into full effect here. Throughout each vision, we see things like how Tikal feels about the situation that is happening, learning about how the Echidnas are going to go to the Emeralds, and the area where the Chao and Chaos are situated, which all leads to the final vision in the game. I think it was smart to show us why Knuckles is the last Echidna in the overall series. It also ties well into the story as to why he is destined to be stuck on the Angel Island, since that's basically the only place he calls home and hasn't been around much other people. I think one thing I wish they went into is Knuckles' thoughts during the visions, since they are the family he had in the past but no longer has. Something as simple as a reaction would go the extra mile. But I like how they explain more of Angel Island, Chaos, and Knuckles as a character attached to the world of Sonic. Knuckles goes through 5 levels in his campaign: Speed Highway, Casinopolis, Red Mountain, Lost World, and Skydeck. His goal is to find 3 Master Emerald shards in the levels. Now, in terms of controls, Knuckles could do all the same things that he could do in Sonic 3K. He could glide through the levels, which is as simple as jumping then holding the jump button in the air. If you glide into a wall, Knuckles will latch onto it, which allows you to climb the wall. The new move he gets is a 3-punch combo. Now, Knuckles, if he had a similar level progression as Tails and Sonic, he would suffer the same problem as Tails with breaking the levels by climbing the walls and gliding across the platforming. But I think they knew that, so they gave him treasure hunting missions. Giving him areas in the levels that are open and meant to be explored makes more sense with his moveset than if he had just a point A to point B level like most of the other characters in the game. Knuckles has 2 upgrades, which are the shovel gloves, which allow Knuckles to dig for items underground, which in my playthroughs of the game I found to be really underused, but I think it's a cool idea for Knuckles to have that ability. The second one is the fighting gloves, which is basically a light speed attack. But for Knuckles, and like with Sonic, I only use this ability against Chaos 6. In terms of the levels Knuckles goes through, I said earlier that he goes through more open and explorable versions of the levels he goes through. The city of Speed Highway, the casino Casinopolis, the mountains in Red Mountain, the ruins of Lost World, and the end of Skytech. Now, not all of them are created equal, since I think Lost World and Casinopolis are a little too small compared to the others, but that's beside the point that they work well as stages for Knuckles to explore. The problem I have with almost every level in Knuckles' campaign is that they are generally too easy. The radar tells you where all the emerald pieces are, which isn't really the problem. More so the fact that the radar gets faster the closer you are, which is a little too easy, I would say. There is also the fact that the call will show you where the shard is, and it makes the levels feel like autopilot at moments. Knuckles goes to go through any sub-levels in the game, and he only had 3 bosses to fight, which are Chaos 2, Chaos 4, and Chaos 6. I already set my pieces on Chaos 4 and Chaos 6, but Chaos 2 is a pretty whatever boss, honestly. All you really have to do is glide around the room and avoid his punches. That's about it. Knuckles is definitely one of the good campaigns in the game, but doesn't reach the highs of Sonic's campaign and another campaign later down the line. Now let's get to the music of the game. One of, if not the most consistent part of this franchise is the music, and Sonic Adventure was a big turning point for the music in the games. During the process of making the music for the game, the team decided to go with rock and roll for the game. Jun Sonoe wanted to retain the classic Sonic soundtrack whilst adding a harder edge to it. I think he did a great job with the soundtrack in that regard. While the entire soundtrack is not all rock and roll, it is the primary sound you will hear in this game, which is a sound I think fits with Sonic's 90s cool more so than any other genre of music, and it's probably the reason I love bands like Green Day and Good Kid to this day. I want to say that this is my favorite soundtrack in the series. There are a lot of pieces in the game that I could go back to any time, such as I also need to mention that this game has vocal songs. Vocal tracks have been in the Sonic series before with the likes of Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic R, but I think Sonic Adventure was a big turning point for the vocal tracks in this series that we still feel the effects of to this day with the likes of Sonic Frontiers and Shadow Generations. In this game, every character aside from Gamma got a vocal theme all to their own, which are played during certain cutscenes and the full thing during the credits of their campaigns. I like that each have their own genre attached to them, like Sonic being hard rock, Big being pop rock, Knuckles being hip hop, and Amy being swag jazz.
It doesn't matter now what happens, I will never give up the fight. There is no way I will run away from all of my prize. Hey big guy, hey little guy, can you tell me who came first? Sorry, but I don't know, we are simply natural. Okay, all you have to do is sit up, look left, right, up and down. Muscles are hard as nails, it ain't hard to tell. I break them down whether they solid or frail. Unlike the rest, I'm independent since my first breath. First test, feel the right, then the worst left. Born on an island in the heavens. The blood of my ancestors flows inside me.
I got up my map and it shows some place I wanted to go. Packed up my stuff, set out for adventure. I know that you're lucky, color is that cool shade. I won't mind painting myself blue for you.
Actually, since we played Amy's song, let's get into her campaign.
It's my turn now!
Amy's story is a fairly simple one. She meets a bird that is being chased by a robot named Zero, and Amy has to protect it. That's really about it, and I'll argue that aside from Big, her campaign doesn't really affect the overall story as much. But it's not as bad as Big. But I do like that Amy has become someone more of her own in this game compared to the classics. Amy back then was just someone who loved Sonic, and there wasn't much to her besides that. Sonic Adventure, she stood out from the crowd of other characters like that, because while she still loves Sonic, she is able to stand on her own, which is shown in the game in many scenes, like when she is in her cell with Gamma on the other side, when she stands up to Sonic when he is about to destroy Gamma, or the end of her campaign where she protects the bird she has been looking after throughout her campaign. Replaying this game made me realize why I like Amy in the first place compared to how I thought she was handled in Forces, but that is a story for a much later video. My only problem is the amount of cutscenes in Amy's story, which suffers cause it takes a while for her to get to the next level, especially in the case of Hot Shelter the Final Egg, but it's not as bad as Tails. Amy goes through 3 stages in her campaign: Twinkle Park, Hot Shelter, and Final Egg. His structure is to get to the balloon to get away from Zero, which is basically the same structure as Sonic, which is to just get to the end of the level. In terms of what makes Amy different from the other characters, in terms of her moveset are a few things. One thing to note is that Amy does not roll into a ball when jumping and does not spin dash in this game. This generally isn't a problem in the 3D games since you can move around the enemy, but also the fact that she can attack in the air. This leads us to her defining thing about Amy, which is that she wields a hammer. With the press of the action button, Amy can swing her hammer while standing still, in the air, or on the move. Using that on the move while also being able to take out an enemy is so satisfying. Amy has 2 upgrades, but I was only able to get 1 upgrade mainly because I was just too lazy to get the other one. The feather allows Amy to spin around, but doing it for too long will make her dizzy, so I never really used it. In terms of the levels Amy goes through, I really don't have a lot to say about them, since there isn't that many to go over. Twinkle Park and Final Egg are too short that they don't really leave a mark on the player who plays it. Twinkle Park is better just from the fact that Amy goes through a section of the level that was only for her, which was the mirror hallways, but that's really about it. Hot Shelter is the best level in her campaign just for the fact that it's the only level in her campaign that is really long. But all the levels are dragged down by 2 things. The first one is that the puzzles in her levels, primarily in Hot Shelter, are really simple, which makes me think, why I couldn't beat the level as a kid? And second is the introduction of Zero being in the levels. Now, the idea of a stalker-like enemy is an interesting one, with it being a thing with Resident Evil 2, which released the same year as Sonic Adventure. It adds suspense to the situation, and I am sure kids were scared of losing a life to Zero. I know I was. But the overall problem is that Zero isn't really a threat. You can basically deal with him with 1 hammer swing, and he is too slow to really be much of a threat, even in areas in Hot Shelter where you are doing puzzles. The only boss Amy fights in her campaign is Zero, the robot that is following her. This is an overall simple boss to fight. You just hit him into the electric wall and then smash his head. Overall, Amy's campaign I think is fine overall. It doesn't reach the highs of Sonic or Knuckles' campaign, but isn't the epitome of boredom that is Tails. Now let's get into the different versions of Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure was released on the Sega Dreamcast, and for 5 years it was only available on the Dreamcast. But after the success of the GameCube port of Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, they remade Sonic Adventure for the Nintendo GameCube called Sonic Adventure DX. In 2010, they released Sonic Adventure DX onto the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. Now to go over each version of the game, I would say that the Dreamcast is definitely the most authentic version of the game to play for the obvious reasons like the character models, lighting, and overall look of the textures. But this is the version I like the least since the game runs at 30 FPS. Now I have to make this clear, I do not mind a game running at 30 FPS. I mean, one of my favorite games is Bloodborne, I think that's obvious enough. But there are certain genres that are better at 60, and fast-paced platformers is one of those. But still, I don't hate this version, but for the best gameplay, I'd rather play the GameCube port. Now, I do understand that people generally don't like this version of the game, and I can definitely see why that is. The game overall has worse lighting and texture work than in the Dreamcast version of the game, with the standout example being Ice Cap and Sonic's version. But I will say that I do actually like the models they use in the DX version, though that is probably nostalgia, since Sonic Adventure DX was one of my first Sonic games I played. This version does have Game Gear ROMs and a mission mode, but I will talk about that when I get to the extras part of the video. What makes this the version I play over the Dreamcast version is that the game runs at 60 FPS, making it the best version for the gameplay feel. There's also the 7th gen ports that I have, since I own the game on Steam, but I didn't play it for this video. It's basically just Sonic Adventure DX running a 720p, but it's the absolute bare minimum for remasters, which is weird to think about, since most other 7th gen remasters and 6th gen games put the game in widescreen, with the best examples being Ratchet & Clank HD and the Slide Trilogy on the PS3. Now I have been playing the PC part of this game for the video, but the difference is that I am using mods to make the game the way that I want it to look. Modded Sonic Adventure on Steam is the best version of Sonic Adventure, hands down. When you download the mod manager, you have options to have whether you want the Dreamcast lighting, textures, and models, or to stick with the DX look of the game. For this video, I went for the Dreamcast look of the game, since while I like the new look of the characters, the Dreamcast models have a charm to them that I can't help but love as well. But what makes this version the best version of the game to play is that you can play the game in widescreen, and it is glorious. The fan content is one of the best parts of the Sonic community, and the mods for Sonic Adventure on PC are one of the main reasons I believe that. So yeah, I recommend the PC version of the game with mods, but if you don't have a PC, I'd say it's a pick your poison deal with the console versions. Speaking of poison, let's talk about Big.
Hold on, Froggy, I'm coming!
Big the Cat is a new character introduced in this game, and I do not hate him as a character, but I do not like his campaign whatsoever. His story is the least impactful out of the main 6 in this game. The only real connection he has is Froggy, who is a plot device for him to be in these outlandish scenarios more so than anything. Aside from that, and the fact that he flies the Tornado 2 off the egg carrier, which will be important for the final story, he is a story I do not care that much about or watch to see through. But Big as a character, I don't really mind as much as most people. A chill character like Big I think is a natural fit in the world of Sonic, and I quite like his stuff in the comics from what I've read, especially his story in the Metal Virus saga. But his story in this game was not it, Chief. Big goes through 4 levels of this campaign: Twinkle Park, Ice Cap, Emerald Coast, and Hot Shelter. The goal of his levels is to fish for his frog, Froggy. Big's controls are very simple, probably the most simple out of all the characters. His main gimmick is that he fishes, which is somehow not well telegraphed. To release the rod, you hold down the action button, then let go when you find a spot to throw it at. You can move the bait from side to side, but to really get fish or Froggy to bite down on it, you must know this one simple thing: hold down on the analog stick. That is how you get the bite. To reel in, you can just use the jump button to reel it in fast, or the action button to reel it in slow, which is important for the durability meter on the side, where if it's full, then you will lose a life. I don't think I need to explain why this sounds boring as shit. The only good thing I have to say about is that when you know what you were doing, you could beat it in a minute, and that's what I did, but I just did not give a flying fuck about his levels. He has power-ups, which are mainly fishing rod upgrades, aside from the life belt, which keeps Big from drowning for some fucking reason. Now, he has 4 levels in the game, but the problem is that they all blend in with how boring they are to go through. I mean, just doing the campaign for Big, I found Froggy in the nearest body of water, which thankfully meant that I didn't have to suffer through as much boredom as I thought I was going to go through. And Big, for some fuck all reason, has a boss fight, which is with Chaos 6. All you have to do is throw your fishing lure at the hole when it shows up. I don't want to put too much energy into this goofy little cat. Big is the worst campaign in the game, and I'm glad they never brought his gameplay style back to future Sonic games. Now let's talk about the voice acting before I go insane. Sonic Adventure was the first Sonic game to introduce voice acting into the series, and the actors in this game are well known and well loved in the Sonic community, and while I wouldn't say that the voice acting is overall bad in this game, it definitely isn't going to outdo games like Spyro, Year of the Dragon, or Crash Bandicoot Warped. But it is definitely better than games of the previous generation like Mega Man X4 and Resident Evil.
It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
Ryan Drummond plays Sonic, and I think that he is a pretty good Sonic overall. He has that energy that Sonic should have, but I do think every now and again it can be a little too much, but a good effort overall.
Oh, shoot! I've lost Amy! I bet that robot hauled butt after her. I'd better catch her before it does.
Tails in this game is played by Corey Bringas, and I never really was big on him as Tails. There's just something about the way he delivers his lines that just never really worked for me.
Wonder where he went. Sure hope he's alright. The tornado's not powerful enough. If I'm gonna get that egg carrier, I need to finish my prototype. It needs a Chaos Emerald to work. Looks like I'd better find one fast.
Michael McGarren, I wish I said that right, was alright as Knuckles. He has the potential to do it perfectly, but he sounds more laid back, like when he should be exaggerated. This is a pack the punch I think future Knuckles actors give, but he ain't bad whatsoever.
Whoa, that was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Oh no, it's starting to happen. Without the Master Emerald's power, this whole island will fall into the ocean.
Jennifer Juilliard as Amy is a pretty spot-on voice for the character, and definitely my favorite voice for the character. Not overdoing it, but also not sounding less energetic than the other interpretations I've seen, being the nice middle ground.
Gee, I'm bored. Every day's the same old thing. Same place, different day. I miss the good old days. Hanging out with my hero, Sonic.
John St. John as Big works as what Big is. He's probably the voice actor I have the least to say about the games, because Big is a simple person and a simple voice, and it works.
Becky! What's wrong with you? Something's not right. We've always been friends. For years. Froggy! Wait up! Oh dear.
I can't mention voice acting without mentioning the late Dean Bristow as Dr. Eggman. He had this energy for Eggman that is matched by his demeanor in all scenes that he is in this game.
Behold my floating masterpiece, the egg carrier! But it pales in comparison to the power of chaos.
I overall quite liked the voices they chose for this game, and most of them would stay for a few years with the series, but the presentation and pacing of the cutscenes have definitely hindered them from their true potential, which thankfully was fixed early on. Now let's talk about Gamma.
Preparation complete.
Gamma's story is definitely my pick for my favorite story out of all the campaigns. It follows the life of one of Eggman's new creations and everything that happens in it. Gamma in the first half of the campaign follows anything that Dr. Eggman gives to him, which is pretty standard for a robot to do. He goes through a training ground, proves himself to Eggman against his older brother Beta, and grabs Froggy for him in Emerald Coast. After he succeeds, Eggman banishes his siblings and has him collect the bird that Amy has with her. But before then, he sees Beta get taken apart for spare parts, which is pretty gruesome to a robot, which leads to the scene with Gamma and Amy. Now before we talk about that, I feel I need to talk about Eggman in this game for a bit. Eggman in this game is such a compelling villain to see through every campaign. With the advent of voice acting and being more focused in the story, we see all that Eggman does in this game. He uses Sonic and Tails to get to the emeralds first, which is pretty low, but that mentality is perfect for Eggman. He has a whole fleet of robots to do his work, with one of them being the main focus in the game, and another sent out to grab a bird that Amy is taking care of. He also has this energy about him that makes him instantly memorable, which is all done by the voice acting. Eggman has always been one of my favorite villains, and I think Sonic Adventure is the reason why. But the focus of Eggman and Gamma's story is that he is a focus for half of Gamma's story, which leads to the second half. When Gamma meets with Amy, she offers him more insight and feels bad for him, which leads to Gamma releasing Amy. Then later on the deck of the egg carrier, Amy returns the favor by helping Gamma, which after all Gamma has seen, is something he never thought would happen to him, which leads him to wanting to free his siblings. Near the end, Gamma wonders what he is going to do with himself, since he is also an E-Series robot. He didn't have to worry about that, as after the boss fight with Beta, Beta gets the last shot and destroys Gamma, setting the two birds inside of the boat free, which turned out to be the parents of the bird Amy was looking after, which is a nice detail. The story for Gamma shows us the life of a robot, more insight into Dr. Eggman as a villain. It takes the idea of animals and robots to a whole new level, while packing emotion into it. If you want a more detailed look into Gamma's story, might I recommend the character analysis of Gamma by my friend the Juicebox, a great video that made me appreciate Gamma even more. Gamma goes through 5 levels in his campaign: Final Egg, Emerald Coast, Windy Valley, Red Mountain, and Hot Shelter. The most common goal in his levels is to destroy something at the end of the level, with the exception of Emerald Coast, where it's just as simple as getting to the end. Gamma is also simple to control, with you needing to just hold down the action button to target an enemy and then release it to shoot. The reason you'd want to do this is the main gimmick of the stages, which is that the timer ticks down. Gamma has 2 main upgrades in the game. The first one is the Jet Booster, which allows Gamma to hover, and this can be really useful in the later levels of the game. And then there is the Laser Blaster, which gives the shots fired from it an blast radius, which I never noticed since I just aim and shoot. The levels are not all that memorable to me personally for the fact that the gimmick isn't really pushed to the test in the campaign. The timer in the first 4 levels are really lenient, to the point that you can beat them without nearly needing to shoot anything. Hot Shelter is the exception, where you actually need to shoot everything to get to the boss with enough time to beat him, which makes Hot Shelter the best stage by default. The bosses of Gamma's story are all the E-Series robots, and while most of them are pitifully easy with you just needing to spam the action button, Beta Mark II is my favorite boss in the game, not only for the story significance of the fight, but the fact that it tests your shooting, while also not being super easy to kill. Gamma I would say is the 3rd best playstyle in the game, but is overall my 2nd favorite campaign in the game, tied with 1st with Sonic. He has the same snafus as Knuckles, but the story is the best in the game. Now before we talk about the final, we need to talk about a little bit about the extras in the game. There is some extra stuff in Sonic Adventure to really sink your teeth into. Emblems, which have been there since the Dreamcast version, are a tally for you to achieve since you completed something, but they're really only a tally and didn't really offer you much. But that all changed in the GameCube port, where for every 20 emblems you get a Game Gear game. The selection is varied enough, but you wouldn't catch me playing them since I already did a video about them last year. There's also mission mode, where you do a variety of things in the levels and hubs to get emblems, which I never really cared for. And finally, there are extra things you can do in the main levels to earn more emblems, like reach your objective with the rings or a harder version of the levels. There's also the Child Garden in this game, but I never really bothered with it, and we'll go further into the Child Garden in the SA2 video. With all that out of the way, we reach the end game of Sonic Adventure with the final campaign, Super Sonic. In the final campaign, Angel Island falls back down to the ocean, and chaos is on the loose after the events that happened on the egg carrier in Sonic and Knuckles' campaign. After Sonic and Tails investigate Angel Island, Sonic gets a vision of what happened in the past with the Echidna tribe, Chaos, and how Tikal was able to deal with Chaos. I always found it weird that Knuckles never shows up in this vision with Sonic, since he is also attached to the story of Chaos, being an Echidna. I mean, Sonic X is able to do this, so it makes it all the weirder for me. Soon after that, Chaos gets the final emerald from the Tornado 2, where all hell breaks loose. mural on the wall that Sonic saw in the Lost World has come true. Chaos has become his strongest form. Eggman tries to deal with him with the egg carrier too, but gets dealt with faster than normal. This is the first time Eggman is taken away from the final boss position, and I think it's justified here, since the story up to this point has mostly been about chaos in the past that led to this situation. So I'm okay with this. Tikal takes physical form and believes that they should steal Chaos and the Master Emerald again, but Sonic doesn't believe that, since while it would deal with Chaos now, who's to say that it wouldn't happen again in the future, with the proof being the fact that it happened in the past to the current moment, with Tikal sealing Chaos after the Echidna species was wiped off the planet. Chaos discarded the emeralds, only having used their negative energy, with Sonic's friends bringing him the emeralds, believing that the positive energy of the emeralds can be used to defeat Chaos, which gives us Super Sonic in 3D. This leads us to the final boss of the game, Perfect Chaos. Now this is a pretty epic moment in terms of the story, but I'm not all that big on this boss. All you have to do is get to Perfect Chaos at a fast speed so that you can reach his membrane. Do that 6 times and you finish him. But what saves this for me is the song that plays during the game, Open Your Heart, the main theme of the game. Open Your Heart is one of the most recognized Sonic songs, and for good reasons, with a catchy beat while not overstaying its welcome.
Can't hold on much longer. I will never let go. I know it's a one-way track. Tell me now how long this will last. I'm not gonna think this way. Nor will I count on others. Close my eyes and feel the burn. Now I see what I've gotta do. Open your heart, it's gonna be alright. Yeah.
Hey, I'll play with you some other time.
After the boss fight, Chaos is back in his Zero form. He sees some Chao coming towards him, and he is now calm. Chaos is someone who just wanted to protect the Chao at all costs, which is something that the Echidnas didn't respect, so he made that species extinct, which humanizes Chaos a lot.
Chaos has changed again, this time for the better.
Yeah! Super Sonic must have neutralized it, so it's nice again.
Chaos and Tikal rise into the afterlife. Tails says another line worthy of them memes,
All's well that ends well, right?
as Sonic runs off on a new adventure, ending Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure is a game that I have a lot of respect for. It does things to ramp up the series to a whole new level with Sonic's gameplay, adding more things to the core gameplay of extra characters, especially with Knuckles and Gamma, the levels being some of the most fun in Sonic's catalog, a soundtrack that is a bop to listen, and a story that tried to be bigger than the previous Sonic games. But the game is also bogged down by many things that are dated or not all that fun. Tails' campaign being a boring slog to get through, Big the Cat as a playstyle, some outliers in terms of levels, bosses that are more of a miss than anything, and some first 3D game syndrome like the pacing of cutscenes and how certain voice lines are delivered. While I wouldn't say I hate Sonic Adventure, I will say that it is the Sonic game I replayed the least in the 3D catalog compared to others in that catalog, in terms of gameplay and even story in a few cases. So that begs the question that has been on many Sonic fans' minds for a few years now. Does Sonic Adventure need a remake? Now, I think that this is on a case-by-case basis, and while I do think that a remake can improve on the outdated aspects of the original game, I do think that the game can't really be remade the same way given the current direction of Sonic that we have been having since 2022, with how the games are made and how the stories are written. But I think that will do it for this video. Sonic Adventure is a game I respect a lot, and I think it is a pretty darn good game. Next time we talk about Sonic, we will be doing a video on one of the most beloved Sonic games ever made, Sonic Adventure 2. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and as always, have a nice day.